From Radio DePaul, Chicago's college connection.
My father spent 3 years restoring this car. It is his love. It is his passion.
I'm Michael Cera, and human skin is my passion.
I learned to feel things I'd never felt before. Love, jealousy, passion for disemboweling.
Look at all the passion on that wall.
Well, jazz flute has always been a small passion of mine.
It's a bathroom.
It's not just a bathroom, David. It's a passion project.
My passion project. Destroying someone else's passion project.
This is Passion Project with your host, Peyton Baisden.
I had a profound thought while I was sitting here just now. It's one of those thoughts that's like life-changing, and you're like, there's a clear before and after to this thought. And I was like, well, we were sitting here, and it was so nice. And I'm like, what if this, perchance, could be the politest episode of Passion Project ever?
Sounds great to me, and I think that's a wonderful idea, Peyton.
Well,
thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much, and you're very welcome. It's so great to have you, and I appreciate your willingness and openness to take part in not only the show. I didn't inform you before this that this would be possibly the politest episode we've ever had of this show. So I'm really grateful that you are also open to that, and that sort of openness is, I really appreciate that.
I mean, I trust in you, and I trust in me, and I think that we can make your dream a reality here.
Yeah.
Sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there like a sir for sirs just goes back and forth. Like you're sir, I'm sir. That's this is a term of respect.
Sure.
Because I was like, I feel like sir, when I say sir, it's like to a superior of sorts, like somebody I respect. But is there like a word like for somebody, like what's the sir for like your underlings?
Well, I feel like at that point it wouldn't be polite anymore, right? I think the fact that we are calling each other sir despite being peers shows it's an upwards respect,
right, in
both directions.
In my head, I envision you as somebody as not necessarily a superior, but like somebody to be respected, somebody I look up to in a way. Whereas perhaps cruelly, I could look at somebody I don't look up to and refer to them as sir in a manner of mockery.
Yeah, most of your other guests.
Yes. Yeah, and speaking of most of my other guests, they aren't here today.
Thank God.
I only have one guest here today. It's Trevor. You are probably the only guest I've had on the show that I actually respect. So that's not true. There's at least been 3 others. Trevor, thank you so much for being here. We do a little thing on this show. We call it the Passion Probe, and it's sort of a loose collection of questions and things I want to know about you, to help the audience get to know you a bit better. Because I do truly think there are people listening right now who have no idea who you are, what you do, the things you've done, the things you're going to do. So I think it's important that they understand that before we get into the soup, before we get into the meat and potatoes, before we get into the lasagna of it all. Yeah. So Trevor, if you could describe yourself to our at-home audience in 3 complete sentences, what would those be?
I am...
Complete, meaning noun and verb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adjectives okay?
Adjectives, as many as you want.
All right.
The bare minimum is noun and verb. Okay. So Trevor runs could be one.
Sure.
We got the noun and the verb, but I need at least that from every sentence.
Trevor runs.
Okay. That's
number 1.
Sentence. Okay.
I am a graduating senior at DePaul, studying screenwriting, getting my BFA. Sentence 2.
That's a good sentence. That was a really efficient sentence. Yeah, a lot of good information there.
Yeah. Friend to all, lover to some, hero soon to be.
That was really beautiful. It was poetic and profound.
Yeah, I'm taking a poetry class right now. So I'm
Are you
using some of that?
Are you really?
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. Is this actually a true fact? You're taking a poetry class?
Yes, but that wasn't a piece.
You didn't write that was just off the dome.
No.
In the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the first person to say this to you. That class is doing wonders for you.
Yeah, it just it opens up your mind to work in different ways.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually quite curious about this. What is poetry class like? What have you learned in poetry class?
I don't know. It's very much a workshop based situation, so it's just
Uh-huh.
good to hear like other student work, and and get yours read and get honest thoughts.
Yeah. Is your work known to elicit emotion? Do people respond to it?
I think so far I'm having good success in this. I'm fairly new to writing poetry. I'm not exactly a pro at it, but I feel like, working my way there.
Due to some previous comments you've made, I know you've written in other contexts. You perhaps would define yourself as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
How is poetry sort of challenged your method or your way of writing? What new perspectives has it introduced to you as a proponent of literature?
I mean, it's the main form of writing I do is screenwriting, right? Which is a form of writing that is very structured, very rules based, in terms of format, in terms of the types of feedback you receive are often focused around because it's such a there's a philosophy surrounding screenwriting of it being a purely like economic medium of in terms of like informational quickness, and I think what I've enjoyed about getting more into writing poetry and then short fiction and sketch writing and other things like that is it really like you can kind of forget all of that. You don't have to feel so trapped by the expectations of the form that can sometimes be so restrictive.
And you find there's a sweet release in the openness of poetry, in the structure or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Have you worked in structured poetic poem format? Do you do a limerick, a haiku?
Love a limerick, love a haiku. Did a sonnet the other week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wish you don't have that sonnet memorized, do you? I would have loved to hear it one day, perhaps. And if there are any people in your life who inspire you to write poetry, I'm sure they would be very excited to hear maybe if you wrote any poetry about them and perhaps experiences you've like shared together as people that have been sort of like formative or...
Yeah, if I was to write any poems about any blonde friends of mine who I've done improv shows with.
Perhaps, yeah.
They would love to hear that.
That is something they would actually be very excited in, and it would make them feel seen in a way that they hadn't felt seen in a long time. Because they're sort of finding a lot of their personal relationships, it's like do you know me, but do you really know me? And just sort of that intentionality there when it would be welcome.
Yeah, and it's like how can we break past, calling each other sir and calling each other friend.
Friend, yeah. Trevor, what if you could only eat pizza or tacos for the rest of your life? What would you choose?
Pizza.
It's a good choice.
Easy.
I don't think it's a wrong choice, but I like pizza. I was thinking last night, I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if I had pizza right now? I don't know if that's crazy.
No, not at all. Hey,
I just really was feeling that.
It's best not to judge your own feelings.
Right. And going deeper, perhaps getting a little crazier, do you like calzones?
I love a calzone. I just nodded, but I realize it's an auditory medium. But I love a calzone.
Trevor nodded in agreement,
yes.
Audio listeners.
Yes.
Very, very fervently.
So picture that in your head. I'm about 6 feet tall. I'm wearing a brown shirt, shoulder length, blondish hair, and I nodded.
I will say, though, the brown shirt has like green undertones.
Yes.
It's a wonderful mix of brown and green to create this like very earthy feel that it is pulling out some of the greens and blues of Trevor's eyes sort of coming together.
And I nodded.
Yes, and Trevor
remember
nodded
that.
while all this other stuff was happening.
Yeah.
Everything else was happening. And then there was a nod on top of that, a nod of agreement. Because, I think it's really interesting that we say nod as like the affirmative, like, yes, I am nodding. But then it's shaking your head for no. You shake your head no, but you nod yes.
But a nod's just a shake in the other direction.
Right. Well, I'm like, they're both, I think they're both shakes and they're both nods.
Yeah.
Like I'm shaking my head yes. And And I'm nodding no.
Nod has the word no
in it. Which I feel like they're, and again, I'm not an etymology guy. I don't make the rules. If I did, though, things would be different.
Yes.
It'd be a little bit more cohesive on that front, because you could nod no and shake yes. Because shake, there's a, I think shake has a positive connotation. Shake is exciting.
You shake it off.
Yeah, shake it off. I'm like, yes. Audio listeners, I just nodded a lot.
Yes.
In active agreement. But speaking of nodding, tying the knot.
Peyton just mimed tying a knot.
Yes, it was a regular knot. I forget what it's called. It's the really basic one.
Yeah, just sort of not a slip knot, but a.
No, I could have mimed a slip knot. It's just that
he's doing that right now.
Yeah, because then you just go around. You put that through there. You got a little loop. You can slide.
It's very realistic.
Yeah. I could tie it around. Oh, whoop! Pulled too hard, and then it's gone. It's the beauty of a slip knot.
Just like that. It's
a metaphor for the ethereal nature and fleeting days of life when you think about it. If you think about it. Speaking of thinking about it, today we're here to think about something far beyond what we know. We're going to take a dip into the realm of the fantastical. Today we're going to talk about Trevor, today we're going to talk about what? What have you brought us today?
Yeah, we're going to talk about fairy tales.
Ooh. Ah. Oh. Ooh. Whoa. That's it.
Yeah, those are some of the noises you might make when you read a fairy tale. I would say particularly if it's a scary one.
Scary tale?
Scary
Is that
tale.
Colloquially known in the fairy tale community?
Yeah, everybody's always talking about scary tales.
Scary tales? Talk about an ankylosaurus. That's a scary tale.
Is that the one with the big thing on it?
Yeah, and the big club tail.
Yeah. Is it the Thaugomizer?
Is that the government term for it?
There's before we get into fairy tales,
we're gonna
get into another passion of mine. Far Side cartoons. There's one Far Side cartoon by Gary Larson that has a bunch of cavemen in a classroom in a class cave, and they're pointing to like the spiky tail on a dinosaur, and it says this part is called the Thagomizer, named after the late Thag Simmons, and that became a sort of universally accepted scientific term for that feature on some dinosaurs. Thagomizer is used.
Perhaps it is. I don't know if there's a difference, because a stegosaur will have the spiked tail, but an ankylosaur has the iconic clubbed tail.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a difference there.
It might be. It might just be for the Stegosaurus.
Yeah. Well, much like the Stegosaurus in its iconic spiked tail, today we're going to be talking about tales, fairy tales, and spiky, scary tales, perhaps. But yes, Trevor, tell us about fairy tales. What's a fairy tale? What do you define them as?
Yeah. So fairy tales, or are a form of folktale that come out of oral tradition. Right? They are typically fantastical in nature. That's where the fairy of fairy tales come from. Although, if you were to use a more commonly Russian term, you might call them wonder tales, or at least the translation is wonder tales. It's stories. Fairy tales today have the connotation very much of being exclusively for children, but they do come out of a broader oral tradition of folk tales that are really more meant for all audiences of all ages, depending on the culture and time that they are individually sourced from. But yeah, typically very fantastical in nature, and displaying a certain set of narrative structures.
Now, I know you are like a historian by trade. You are a knower of things, and historically, is this one of, if not like the oldest storytelling tradition? I mean, well, like oral tradition, like storytelling, has existed forever. Which I will say that's probably the oldest like form of storytelling, and perhaps performance, and perhaps theater. Who's to say? Depending on how it was done. But like fairy tales, as under that umbrella, again, like we can tell whatever stories we want, but like specifically like fairy tales are like a version of that. They've been around for a while, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how far back you want to define a story as that, because I really do feel that these are sort of terms we use retrospectively.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to the people who knew them initially and knew them in their oral form in particular, it'd just be stories you'd hear, right? Like bedtime stories or stories told between friends or from parents to children. And it's sort of almost an academic way to look at them or to categorize them or to market them in terms of like publication or what have you. Because if you look at the Grimm's fairy tales, which are probably the most
classic,
famous,
there's a lot of iconic fairy tale in there.
Yes, yeah, and they're a set of German stories published by Jakob and Wilhelm Grimm in the mid to late 1800s. I want to say 1860s, 1870s, but I could be off by a couple decades there. Were originally published under the title The Children's and Household Tales, right? And fairy tale is more of an American or English categorization
version of that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like, is this when we start to see like the fairy tale of it all? When I know you're an accredited historian in this in this realm, but like everybody, most people know the Brothers Grimm. Like that's sort of the reference of like if you want pure raw like fairy tale, but they had sort of gathered these stories and were like, let's put them together, let's slap them in a book, let's get this out to the world. And then from there, do we see like the advent of the fairy tale of it all?
Yeah, I mean they definitely are the most influential, certainly within Germany, but I would say also within the Americas and British English-speaking world. You also have people around the same time, like I can't remember his first name, but Afanasyev, who was the Russian sort of equivalent. I think he came a few years later, but again, I do have to come clean and say I'm not actually accredited.
What?
By any institution.
You lied when you came onto the show. You told me.
I said a lot of things.
And I'm not mad at you.
My name's not even Trevor.
Okay, now I'm mad at you.
Yeah.
That was my favorite thing about you. It's not even true.
But
so yeah, the fairy tale of it all.
Yeah, so I think like definitely were the most influential to our modern perception, and that's the one that is the like set of tales that really places like the Disney Corporation and things really drew the most from. Beauty and the Beast is more of a French tale, but a version of it sort of does appear within some of the Grimms. But the Grimms themselves, to your point about being gatherers, they were editors. They're by trade, they considered themselves linguists more than anything. And their goal was not necessarily so much to spread these stories for their own sake or spread these stories for, pure entertainment, but really was a tool for them in the hopes of sort of solidifying a German folk identity, linguistically and culturally. They were really about gathering for sort of as we talked about briefly over text before this, sort of like nationalist purposes. Now you might, I think that word becomes very loaded in this context, especially considering Germany.
There's been a lot of German nationalist movements.
Yeah, I don't know if your listeners are aware of that, but but it was they were sort of influential towards a rise of Nazi, not towards the rise of Nazism, but they were a tool used by Nazis, about a century after, in terms of like the appeal to a classical idea of a German culture. And I think you get these sort of folk revivals, whether it's of music and I'm not the first person to think of it. Like, I don't want to pretend like this
You're
is
inventing
my
this.
idea
Whoa.
On the spot. But like, you do see these sort of like folk revivals of stories, of music, of costume and dress, sort of emerge out of a search for national identity. And for whatever reason, like the Romantic movement of the 1800s was really prime time for that in a lot of countries across Europe.
They were like, this is something that we can claim as like uniquely ours, or like this is something that's big, and it's like, yeah, we did that.
Yeah,
those grim brothers. Not to get into etymology again, it's just the word of the day and the thought. When the adjective grim, did that come post Grimm Brothers, or is this just a coincidence? Well, because I'm like, that's awfully grim.
Yeah, I feel like Grim Reaper appears much before that.
Yeah. So this is just a beautiful happenstance.
Maybe they're both Germanic in origin. I don't know.
Perhaps. Our etymologists get on this. However, that being said, Grimm fairy tales are, I think, at least now, are sort of iconic and sort of known for their, what some would describe as darker tone. I think primarily because we see versions of these, especially in Disney and other media, that are fun, in very child-forward, very child-friendly. Whereas when you read the original tales, it's like, no, crazy stuff is happening, guys. Of those Grimm tales, do you have a favorite? Do you have a standout?
My like all-time favorite, the one that I always like come back to and think about, especially if you're only considering like the very iconic ones that are well known today, it's Hansel and Gretel. Hands down.
Classic.
I love Hansel and Gretel. It's just the most horrifying story in the world. And I don't know. I think it speaks to a lot of really heavy ideas for children.
Right.
Idea like parental abandonment is sort of, I think that's always what's been scariest about it to me, more so than the witch or the cannibalism, is like your dad has decided that it's best to leave you in the woods.
And it's like, yeah, this is good.
Yeah. I mean, he's torn up about it. It's that wicked mother's fault. But yeah, just I think there was something about that spoke to me as a kid, even though I had the most loving, wonderful parents in the world.
I think that makes it all the more horrifying.
Yeah,
they just
exactly.
leave you in the woods.
Like I had sort of a recurring fear of like every time I would, when you would like were a kid and you'd be in the grocery store and like you'd lose sight of your parents for a second. My fear with that was not just that I lost them, it was that they left me intentionally and were going to go live a happier life without me. So I think that's maybe part of
that's the appeal of this story.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell if that was the impetus for it, or if I just responded to it because I already had that fear. But Hansel and Gretel, I think, it has some of the most beautiful images within the Grimms. Certainly, I always come back to this. The first trail that Hansel leaves behind is of the pebbles he keeps in his pocket. And there's a beautiful description in a number of versions of it that is about the moonlight shining on the rocks. And I think there's some. It says that they glow like silver pennies on the forest floor or something to that effect. And I think I'm quite drawn to that image as well.
Yeah. I wonder what your thoughts are, because especially now in the modern day, these stories are marketed towards children. I think because of brands like Disney and the way that these stories have been adapted, and in certain ways toned down a lot to be more child friendly. But these stories, if you look at something like Hansel and Gretel, it centers children. I think in certain ways it's for children. The original title of the book was like stories for like children
and household tales.
Children and household. So like it was always sort of intended for children. And I'm like, I wonder what your thoughts are on, like, because to me it seems there's an element, part of the reason why these stories that are so in some ways upsetting or like aren't afraid to like do like terrible things do happen in a way that like nowadays I don't think we're particularly keen on or see. Like I feel like there's an element of like moralism here, or like it's like, oh, we're trying to teach these children a lesson through storytelling. Like, is that something you see like prevalently through fairy tales, or what do you think that function of it is?
It's certainly there. And the Grimms themselves, as they edited these tales, they published I think it was 8 versions of the tales over their lifetimes, and each time it would be edited more and more. They were certainly placing their own values into it. If you look at the original publication of the tales, a lot of them have wicked mothers, and then by the like 5th edition, it's all wicked stepmothers. So I think there always is an element of moralizing coming from the teller, right? And I think what's interesting with fairy tales is because they are sourced from that oral tradition, is like there is no one teller. So there's sort of a confluence of dozens, hundreds of different people's ideas, some of them intentionally moralizing, some of them unintentionally moralizing, some of them just repeating what they've heard before. And so I think you get a lot of these stories where it's like they're approaching a moral, but it's not always exactly like clear,
explicitly said,
or it's not always coherent. And then you have some that are, a lot of these tales are seemingly, to me as a reader, more purely for entertainment. And some of those get really bawdy. Like there's story called Mrs. Fox, I think, which is about a fox who thinks her husband has died, and she's trying to find, I think, a fox with 9 tails to replace him. And it's like there's some debate on how bawdy that story is and what tail means, because some of the word choice for tails in German can mean, I hope I'm allowed to say this on radio, penis.
What? Interesting.
We're going to get fined.
I can afford it. The amount of money this show makes is obscene.
Yeah.
Like, I do not know what to do with it, so, like, thank you.
Audio listeners, Peyton is wearing a full gold suit.
Yeah. This is the real gold from the earth.
From the earth.
Yes.
But, like, there are a lot of tales that are sort of, like, sex jokes or are purely like morbid for sort of morbidity's sake. There's a story called How the Children Play at Slaughtering, which I suppose could theoretically have a moral of like, don't leave your like, don't hurt people or don't leave your siblings unattended. But it's basically like kids are playing a game where they're pretending to kill each other, and then one of them kills another, and then like the father comes home and sees that they've done this, and he gets so mad that he kills the kid who killed the kid, and then he dies, and I think the house burns down, and then the mother comes home and she hangs herself because she's so sad. Like it's just like, so utterly
like
horrible and morbid and pointless.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a thing of like, these stories are told for entertainment. They're told for a lot of reasons. They're told sometimes to moralize, and sometimes those morals are maybe there intentionally at one telling and by another telling lose their meaning, or a story that didn't have a moral is imbued with a moral by a teller eventually. One of my favorite stories in the Grimms is called The Virgin Mary's Child, or Our Lady's Child. And if I can we got time for a brief rundown of that one?
Yeah.
Um,
Spoilers for Our Lady's Child.
Yeah.
If you haven't pause now, read it.
Yeah.
Pause this live broadcast. Go read it. Got it? Perfect.
You're back. Okay. But basically, it starts off very similarly to a lot of Grimms of like woodcutter.
Classic Grimm occupation.
Yeah, and we don't have enough woodcutters anymore.
No, we don't.
That's when men were men.
Let's talk about it. Actually, let's keep moving.
But he doesn't have enough money to feed his infant daughter or his 3-year-old daughter, something like that. And one day, the Virgin Mary appears to him and is like, "Hey guy,
Hey,
give me your daughter. I'll raise her in heaven." And he's like, you're the boss, lady. And he gives his daughter to her, and she grows up in heaven, and it's beautiful, and it's so peaceful. And then one day, Mary's like, "Hey, I'm going out of town for 2 weeks. Look at like it is what happens."
Yeah, sure.
It's like, here are 13 doors. Here are 13 keys. You can open those first 12. Don't open that 13th. She opens the first 12, obviously, and they're filled with the apostles. And then she opens the 13th, and it's filled with the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And it marks her finger, turns her finger gold. Mary comes back and is like, hey, you do that? You open that door? And she's like, no. She's like, you sure? You're not lying to me? And she's like, no, I didn't open that door. She's like, you lied to me. I'm going to send you back to Earth, and I'm going to remove your tongue. And so, yeah, she sends her back to Earth naked, no tongue, having never really experienced Earth or any sort of pain or hunger or anything. And I'll speed through this last bit because there's a point here, but I promise. She's in the woods. A prince comes along. He sees her. He falls in love. He marries her. They start having babies. First baby happens. Mary appears and is like, hey, just checking in. Did you open that door back there in heaven? And she's like, no. And Mary takes the baby away. She has another baby. Same thing happens. She has a third baby. Same thing happens. And the king and his advisors are like, hey, she's eaten those babies. She's an ogre. She's eaten those babies. And they burn her at the stake. And Mary appears to her in her last moments. It's like, hey, do you want to repent for opening that door? And she's like, yes, I opened that door. And she restores her tongue, extinguishes the flames, and she lives happily ever after. And so I think that one pretty clearly has a moral.
Yes.
Don't lie.
Lying is
repent
bad.
for your sins.
Sure.
But it's delivered in such a horrific, troubling way that I find it difficult to view that story in any way that doesn't make me ill.
Yeah.
Like, it's so petty. It's so cruel. So I think, there is a lot of that moralizing.
It's unrealistic. I will argue, I think that's also a feature of a story like this, where it's like sort of seeing the worst thing that could possibly happen, in that like frightening element to it of like, oh God, like this is terrible.
Yeah.
It makes me want to lie even less.
Yeah, absolutely. It's supposed to scare you, right? But I think it is an immoral way of teaching morals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that one just fascinates me. Like, I think about that one all the time.
Every day.
Basically, because
every single time you consider lying,
I go,
wait,
Mary's going to take all my babies and steal my tongue.
Yeah. Which would be bad. I also like that the discovery of the 13th door was that the Holy Spirit was in there. It wasn't anything crazy or bad.
Yeah, it was like,
just his
shouldn't
room.
she like be aware of that?
Yeah.
She lives in heaven.
Yeah, the Holy Spirit's
also gonna be there.
Maybe he was having a tough day. Just needing some alone time. 2 weeks off. And that's another moral of the story. Respect others' boundaries. That's fascinating. I also think it's sort of interesting to which of these stories we choose to, I guess, continue to tell, but like adapt and uplift, because that's niche pull for the real ones. Like there's no Disney movie about that.
No.
And I think part of that is because I don't know. That one has a lot of unsavory elements.
Yeah.
It's like something like Cinderella. You can, when they did, sort of shave off the worst parts.
Yeah, they cut off the toes a bit.
Yeah, if you will. If you will. Something I sort of breaking down like the genre conventions of this. What do you feel is the function of the fantastical elements of these stories? What is the virtue of you telling me the story that you just did versus you telling me a story of like how somebody was in a market and then they lied and then they got their hand cut off or like their tongue cut out for lying as was a punishment that was normal? Like, what do you think adds when we add in these sort of fantastical elements of I guess this most of the ones in that story are religious, but like creatures, magic,
Talking animals.
powers, talking
Yeah.
animals, yeah.
I think it's the reason people today still like stories like that, or like a fantasy book. Stories themselves aren't real, right? Like any,
What?
yeah,
What?
yeah.
It didn't happen?
Nothing happened, man. No story has ever been real. No,
Oh.
but like through the act of telling a story, whether it is based on life or not, we are inventing and we are taking it away from reality. And I think that sometimes the fantastical elements of these types of things really do help us connect with them or like by making it more distant from our lives, we can see our reflections a little clearer. And I think the religious ones, it's like a lot of those are, you know, even more direct reflections of people's perceived existences, right? Like a talking animal one might just be a fantastical element, but for people, some of these religiously inclined ones, especially for people of the time, might be taken a little more literally or a little more at face value than we are going to see them today. Like our reality, our stories are subject to our reality, and our reality is subject to our stories. And there's multi-directional influence going on there.
And these exist at the crossroads of what is real, what is not, what is true, what is false, what excites us, and what bores the hell out of us. The sort of the dichotomy of stories. Speaking of which, I noticed you ended that last tale, even though it was a brief rundown of it, with the ever classic happily ever after. Is that present in like original Grimm fairy tales, or is that what purpose does that serve, do you feel, in these stories?
Yeah, there's certainly versions of that and recurring phrases that, like, it's shorthand, right? You don't have to tell me what happens if you say happily ever after. And I think part of that is just because it's nice to hear, it wraps everything up cleanly, but also it serves a function. We talked about this extensively. I've taken a few classes about fairy tales.
Well.
Wouldn't you have guessed? But we talked about this pretty extensively in a class I took about Russian fairy tales. Of these recurring shorthands. That really, one of their main functions is for the storyteller, right? They are ways to string stories together without having to cover every detail. They are ways to help remember what happens next. You hear, like, you know, Once Upon a Time in a Faraway Land is very common for at least American versions of like German tales and things like that. Whereas a lot of the Russian tales have things like in the Thrice Ninth Kingdom, which is sort of their shorthand for faraway kingdom, of like it's 27 kingdoms away, or things like For a Long Time or a Short Time. You'll see that appear in a lot of Russian tales in terms of like, and the young tailor stood trying to make a decision for a long time or a short time. And that's, again, another just transitional phrase. And a lot of the Russian ones also end with sort of anecdotes from the teller about, because if a story would end at a feast, as a lot of them do, like at a wedding or something, a lot of those stories, at least in their written form, now end with, and I would know I was there, and
Awesome.
and I drank wine, but none of it got into my mouth. And so that's sort of like a almost a call for a tip of like, yeah, I'm real thirsty.
Yeah.
Buy me a drink. I told you this story.
Yeah.
Which speaks, I guess, a little more to the Russian oral tradition of like not necessarily always being for children. But yeah, so I think like happily ever after is pleasant to hear, and it's a helpful shorthand. It's these stories, because they come from an oral tradition of having to remember everything or recombine stories as you go. It's helpful to have those shorthands.
Yeah. Are there things you notice in your studies as an accredited historian?
Accredited.
About geographic influence? I mean, like, sort of influence of that? Because are there themes that are more prevalent in Russian tales that aren't very present in German tales? Or what are there similarities there? Like, has sort of like humanity general gravitated towards like certain elements of these stories and things?
I think one of the most prevalent recurring themes sort of across cultures is food, right? Absence of food, excess of food, magical qualities to food. And I think that's because it's human nature to get hungry, right?
I get hungry every day.
Yeah, like 3 times at least.
Ish, yeah.
And so I think like there is something very consistent about that, about stories where children are going hungry, or stories where our hero starts hungry and then comes across enormous quantities of food, magical quantities of food. The gingerbread house in Hansel and Gretel, things like that. And those are pretty prevalent across multiple, throughout every culture of stories that I've read extensively from, which is mostly German, Russian, and a little bit Icelandic. But speaking to what you said about location, I think it's very interesting. This is divergent. We can get back to
sure.
what you just brought up, but I think it's very interesting the way German stories typically have no set location. They'll be like, in a town, this happened. In a faraway land, this happened. Very rarely is there any specific, at least within the Grimms. And then you go to the Russian tales, and it's a lot of in a town, in the Thrice Nine Kingdom. But then you go to the Icelandic ones, and every story is like directly tied to something very specific. I guess in Russian ones, I'll say this, there's a lot of references to Russia as a whole, or to the border of Russia. Sometimes the border has sort of a magical quality of you can't cross it easily, or you have to use special things. But for the Icelandic tales, it's like it will be specific geographic, like this mountain, or this river, or this valley. And I've been trying to parse that. Like, I don't really get why. I guess Iceland's so small compared to these geographically. Like, you can kind of say any spot, and somebody from even who lives pretty far away will go, "Oh yeah, I know that spire of rock that you're talking about."
Classic.
So I think that's interesting.
Well, it's interesting too, because I definitely see the appeal of having a sort of vague location that people can more easily see themselves in and like apply themselves to.
It's the same reason a lot of the characters I feel like don't have names, right? Just the woodcutter, or even if they have these sort of stock names, Hans, Hansel, Ivan for the Russian tales,
Michael, Steve.
These are sort of the modern American archetypal heroes.
Michael and Steve.
God bless them.
Yeah, in speaking more like modern, are there recent fairy tales that you're like, oh, are fairy tales still around? Like, what do those look like nowadays? And have there been recent ones or newer ones that have found their way to you and you're like, oh, this rocks. This is cool.
I think there is a real tendency towards sort of self-consciously referential fairy tales, if that makes sense. Things that call themselves fairy tales or folk tales. I think like Robert Eggers' movie The Witch, the like tagline to that is "The Witch, a New England folk tale." Or you have an author who I've read a little bit from, hope I'm going to get her name right, Ludmila Petrushevskaya. She writes what are at least published in the States as scary fairy tales. Like scary tales. We brought it back. So I think there's a lot of people who are very self-awarely influenced by these stories, but I think we have lost some amount of the oral tradition that is sort of, I feel, a requirement for like crafting new fairy tales. I just did quotes for all the audio, like air quotes for all the audio listeners.
Yeah.
But then I think in other ways we still have stories that do evolve naturally like this. I think about like when you were a kid and everybody on the playground is like trading particularly scary stories. I feel like those are sort of a form of just the modern folktale, right? Like, did you ever hear the story about like the humans can lick too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that
classic.
sort of, it's not as fantastical, but like I think that is where you get the more truthful or genuine, if you want to use that terminology, sorts of like modern versions of tales. It's just in the way that like there have always been folk tales and there have always been stories that are passed from one teller to the next, to the next, to the next, with the slight changes that come from just being a human and making it up.
Amen. Isn't that a beautiful thing? And speaking of being a human and making it up, you are a writer. I've learned, a poet even in some contexts. Have you ever considered creating your own fairy tales? Have you created any of your own? What, and if so, I'd love to hear about it. And if not, like what do you think is the barrier for doing something like that?
I think I do write very much from that place a lot. I'm kind of working on actually an adaptation of The Virgin Mary's Child that we talked about earlier. I'm about a third of the way through.
Not bad.
Through a draft of that. Or like the first feature I wrote, which again is still a work in progress, is not a direct adaptation of anything, but certainly pulls a lot of these elements. I think I'm very drawn as a writer to a world that operates on a different logic. I think that's what I like about them is events are allowed to happen without explanation. And I was thinking about, the first class I ever took on fairy tales was a Grimm's Fairy Tales class, and the very first day we read just a little, we read a version of The Frog Prince. And that version of it began with a queen bathing, and a crab crawled out of the water and spoke to her and was like, "You will have a beautiful daughter," or something to that effect. And we read it, and the professor just went, "What did we think about that?" And there was like 4 people that raised their hands and immediately went, "Yeah, I didn't really get why the crab was talking." It was like, it's a fairy tale. Like, it's like, you have to accept that is the world you're entering into here. Like, it baffled me.
So crabs don't do that.
Crabs don't
do that. So this story doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this is a bad story. But, so I'm drawn to a world where you don't have to explain why things are working in a different way than they are. Like, so I'm drawn to that. And then I think in fiction I've written some short stories that are in a similar vein, right? I think I'm drawn to the protagonist as sort of archetype. I'm drawn to a journey, a physical journey. And I'm drawn mostly to that the world of the fairy tale that is
in which things can happen.
Things can happen, and that there is sort of a darkness lurking somewhere.
The darkness.
The darkness.
Uh-oh. I'm scared. Well, Trevor, in a moment of radical honesty, I am scared because our episode's almost over.
That's the scariest thing I've ever heard.
And I don't know what comes after it. But I do know we'll figure that out together. Because once we go off air, once this recording stops, we'll have to make a plan.
We'll walk out into the darkness together, hand in hand.
Much like Hansel and Gretel. And we'll leave a little trail. And you guys get to follow it, IRL. But anyway,
at Passion Project Show on Instagram.
And you can follow our breadcrumb trail at Passion Project Show, in which I will be announcing next week's guest soon. And, among other things, that's it. That really tickled you. Trevor, before we go today, any final thoughts? You want to restate your thesis about fairy tales? What do you want to leave the audience with?
I don't know. I'd go out, read some old stories, tell them again, tell your own stories, get weird, get silly, get creepy, get vulgar.
Yeah.
Mostly that.
Yeah.
As soon as I get off the air, I'm getting real vulgar with it. But yeah, just I think keep your mind open to things that exist outside of logic, and go out and read a weird story.
Maybe a crab can talk today.
Maybe if we believe hard enough, a crab will talk.
Yeah. And I want to extend a very special thank you to my favorite talking crab, Trevor.
I've been a crab this whole time for audio
listeners. We didn't know if we could get away with it this whole time.
Yeah, I feel pinching. Bad lying to you. Yeah, I was trying to pinch away from the mic.
Yeah, and I think it worked.
Yeah,
I think we got through it. And yeah, just another example of how fantasy can be all around us. The fairy tale are the friends we made along the way. That's very awesome.
Yeah.
Fairy like fairy. Thank you so much, listeners, for being here. Thank you so much, Trevor, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back next week, fingers crossed, unless I go on a journey of my own and the darkness gets me. But I plan on overcoming it. I plan on living happily ever after.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any last thoughts?
I think I'm all right.
All right. For audio listeners, Trevor shook his head no. A thematic bookend to when he nodded his head yes all those years ago.
Story circle.
Oh, we'll talk about that next time. Great story circle. All right, everybody. Catch you on the flip side. Stay passionate. Bye.
Bye.
Boom. How about that?
That was so fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.